spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition. This is ABC's Wide World of Sport.
I love that. It brings back Saturday and Sunday afternoons for me, because when I was a kid, this would own the television set. We were not a big sports household, and I wasn't really into sports, but ABC would bring sports from all around the world, and there were things that we knew, and everybody agreed were sports, and there were things that we didn't know, and some people thought were maybe sports and weren't sports. And then there are things where you even argued whether they were athletes or not. Now, I was very careful in picking this picture and showing this in Germany. We've got Sebastian Vettel, and you've got a feeling right now, when I question whether Sebastian Vettel is an athlete, I want you to hold on to that feeling and understand where Dustin's coming from when he starts to tell you about esports. Because esports athletes were recognized by the United States State Department as athletes for purposes of visa for coming over in the competitions that Dustin's going to talk about. Esports isn't new. This is the very first competition that happened. And I love this. This is the Intergalactic Space War Olympics, and I put some red in there so that you can notice. A lot of you will know the name of the guy who wrote the article. Stuart Brand started the Whole Earth catalog, among other things. And this tournament was put on by Rolling Stone and covered by Rolling Stone. This picture of the champion was taken by Annie Leibovitz. And to get people to go to the contest, you'll see they had free beer. It's changed a little bit since then. These are this year's champions. That was the Staples Center in Los Angeles. So why should anybody in the room care about a bunch of guys watching this, or maybe? Well, in reality, this year, there were 32 million people that watched the League of Legends Championships, and when you compare that to things like the NBA Finals at 18.4 million, 16.6 million, or 2.9 million, of the people all around the world that all of these advertisers and sponsors and brands are trying to reach, you start to understand why this is important, because none of those people were watching television or reading magazines during that time. The #1 broadcaster of live gaming throughout the year is a company called Twitch TV. We'll talk about that in a second. They just released these numbers last week. 12 billion player minutes watched every month, up 100% from last year. 45 million unique viewers, and 6 million video broadcasts going out. And again, people not watching TV, not reading a magazine, not looking at a billboard when they're doing this stuff. So here's some pictures of the venues where League of Legends happens and the tournaments coming up. And with that, I can sit down and talk to these guys for a little bit about what it is that they do and why you should care. So Dustin, a lot of people in the room here probably don't even know what Riot is, so tell me what Riot Games is and what you guys do.
Cool. Well, since we are on a short timeline, I'll give you guys the TLDR. Riot Games is founded in 2006. We came out with our game League of Legends in 2009, and it's kind of exploded onto the scene. It's a MOBA game, which probably a lot of you aren't familiar with. It's a multiplayer online battle arena. It's essentially a 5-on-5 highly strategic game where two games are never going to be the same. It is a sport. It was really built as a sport, and that's been a lot of the allure and passion of fans around the world who have started picking it up. It was launched first in North America, and then shortly thereafter in Europe, and now across the globe. And in certain markets, it has kind of hyper penetration. So in Korea, for example, when it's compared in the PC Bong rankings, it's 40% market share, where kind of second game's around 11%. So it has this hyper penetration in markets like Korea and Taiwan, and esports has really exploded onto the scene all over the globe.
But what are people doing when they're playing the game? So esports is an element of it, but when somebody comes in and starts playing the game, are they playing by themselves?
Yeah, you know, there's a tutorial it's a free-to-play game, which is kind of a different business model in the Western Hemisphere. It was the first kind of AAA-rated game to go fully free-to-play. And they do play by themselves, or they get roped in with friends. And I think 94% of our players have referred their friends to come play. They say, hey, where'd Tommy go? I don't see him anymore. Oh, he's been playing League of Legends. Maybe I should try it out. So they get involved that way, and it's a fairly kind of fun process, just like it would be learning any new sport. So picking up basketball and playing with your friends. And the cool thing about League of Legends is it can be enjoyed at all different skill levels. So whether or not you're playing in kind of a junior league as someone who's just starting out, or someone who almost went pro but never made it and playing highly competitive, or even those people that played it professionally, it is enjoyed at all different competitions.
Matt, you have a responsibility at Coke to make Coke relevant in the gaming market. One of the first things that you did is reach out into this market. Why did you do that?
Well, primarily the size and scope of the platform. Well, that's one reason. The other reason is because I've known Riot for a long time, and I think there's a lot of sort of like-mindedness in terms of being authentic with any kind of brand integration. Because as most in this room that game know, that market can be very volatile if you go at them too hard or in a way that's inauthentic from a brand standpoint. So given that kind of synergy there, and also given just the sheer numbers. For example, well, we're in Europe, but the Super Bowl in the United States is a massively viewed and very expensive ad platform for brands, to the tune of about 111 plus million, viewers, every time the Super Bowl happens. But when you start to layer on a gender and a certain age split that we're very, very interested in as a consumer packaged goods company, and by the way, one that's incredibly difficult to reach, you layer that on top of the Super Bowl, all of a sudden that number comes pretty far down, and an audience like what these guys have created actually eclipses it severalfold.
Yeah.
So you're talking about people who come in and play the game. So there are people who play the game and they just play against each other. They group up with their friends. Some are formal 5-on-5 teams. Some are just people jumping into the game. Mm-hmm. But you've added a whole nother dimension to the game by formalizing a league. We talk about esports, but this is actually something that you formed and supported. So what is the structure?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Of the play and bringing people in.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, esports has been around for decades now, ever since the kind of local tournaments that were hosted at colleges and dorm rooms or conference centers. What we've really tried to do is create a structure for people to dedicate their careers and their professions to playing video games.
Okay, so that's it. So their careers and their profession. You're
Yes.
saying that there are people who make a living playing these games.
Yeah, so we have 8 professional teams in North America. There's 8 professional teams in Europe.
It's a very hard decision for those of you that have kids in the audience, especially that are starting to play these games. And they may come to you one day and say, I'm going to be a professional gamer. So just get ready for that and listen to Dustin. It may make sense. You may not be as upset as you think.
So, I mean, we have 5 global leagues, and these players are actually living in a gaming house together. They practice 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, all gearing up for these weekly competitions. So just like there's...
Okay, so they're practicing in the game house, but now they're also sending feeds out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so people also get to interact with their fans, so while they are practicing, they're live streaming it as well to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who are tuning in just to watch these guys practice.
So they're practicing, they're sitting in the house playing the game, and they're practicing, and people are watching, and sponsors are paying money for the inventory in the feed.
Yep, and teams have been sponsored by Samsung, by Nike. Coca-Cola is obviously getting in, and what's been so cool and unique about this.
But it's not a bunch of guys in their basements, in their mom's basements, living around not taking showers. This is kind of like watching Michael Jordan and Kobe practicing against each other.
Yeah, it's getting there. They are the equivalent of those top athletes, and it's still very early on in the stage, but these guys are making their careers playing games. Their big sponsor dollars are coming in to engage with these players, and as Matt mentioned, I mean, it's a demographic that's traditionally been very difficult to reach.
So they practice in this league, and they've got weekly tournaments?
Yep.
That happen by regions?
Yeah, it's broadcasted 26 weeks out of the year.
And who broadcasts it?
We broadcast it ourselves. So Riot.
And who does the production?
We do. Yeah, Riot's built
all
out
around the world.
We do it in North America and Europe, and then we have partner leagues in Korea, in Southeast Asia, and in China. And then when we do these big events where you guys can see the pictures, it was in Shanghai, it was in France, it was in Los Angeles for Staples Center, it was in Seoul.
Yeah, other reasons why we're very interested, because we're a global company. I mean, there's really only 2 countries we're not sold in. So, you know, having a platform like this to authentically integrate brand into and reach this kind of demographic, which, by the way, and you know, Dustin's mentioned it a couple times, but it's a very, very social demo too. These people communicate nonstop with each other. They're big communicators when they're in the game because it's a team sport and they have to be, but that proliferates way outside the game. So it's very real time. You know, whatever happens in the game, you can read about on the front page of the internet, say Reddit, almost real time, and that conversation carries on. So then in the end, you've got a lot of great organic communication happening even well outside the game, and it creates this great ripple effect if you get on the right side of it. And that's where the authenticity comes in. That's where the value-based plays we're doing.
But the other thing that you've seen is there are the players, but these streams don't just go out naked to the world. So there are people that are, what are they doing before they put it out?
Well, they edit and cast.
The casters.
Yeah.
And
so there's, you know, there's big personalities that take the content, typically through gaming, all kinds of different games really, but they cast their gaming experience and layer their personality on top of it. And then
so a separate person. There's a just like watching a soccer game or a football game or
well,
something.
we're talking about different things. You're talking about actual live casters, like sportscasters during the actual event that sit up there in a bureau like ESPN and actually do color and play-by-play commentary of what's happening, and that goes out, and that goes wide and broad, and that's what Riot does that better than any company in the world in this space. And then there's also amateurs that have come up from the outside, right? And they do it as well, and they get a lot of love and a lot of views on their channels as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's an entire ecosystem of people who are kind of teaching folks tricks of the trade. For example, so like, here's how you can be the best jungler, which is a position in our game like a midfielder in football would be. And so they're kind of talking over that. And what's unique about it is it's the first time where fans have had an ability to interact with these personalities and these pro sports guys. Like if Kobe Bryant is shooting a basketball around during practice, he can't really talk with fans, but our pros are streaming on Twitch, which is the platform that Keith mentioned, where it's kind of the cable of the internet for folks to watch gaming. But you know, they're practicing and they're talking to fans and they're seeing this chat while they're doing it. And it's a really cool, unique way for this interactive sport to go reach this audience.
Now, can anybody be a participant in the World Championship and the?
So it is a long, arduous process to get to Staples, which was our World Finals event. You know, as I mentioned, in North America, the league that we have, for example, it's 26 weeks of broadcasts that are 2 to 3 days where they're playing against the other teams. There's 8 teams, and only 2 of those teams actually make it into the kind of global competition where we had 14 teams from around the world compete to it. But you know, North America's allocated a couple spots, Europe is, and all of our other regions.
And they're treated like athletes, right? I mean, how many months ago was it? 3-4 months ago, the U.S. State Department decided to give these guys, you know, athletic visas so they could come into the States and train like athletes, but they play this game. I will add that, and I don't know, agree or not, but like some of the best teams in the world have actually adopted a very holistic approach to the game, right? So they don't just play the game all the time. There's fitness programs, they're watching what they eat, they're training their brains, they're studying about strategy and communication and so forth.
That's really why Coca-Cola got into it, because there's actually fitness and performance.
There's a lot of interesting peak performance things that you can look at as it relates to this game as an on-ramp to want to adopt that. And if you look at that sort of all the way down the line, it begins to look a lot like aspirational storytelling. Which is really cool, because if you get the top pros in the world adopting a certain kind of training system that actually is good for you, then all the millions and millions behind them that aspire to be them, you know, some of them will adopt it too. So it is an interesting, very, very interesting dynamic that's happening, and that's proliferating out to the West and Europe, right?
Mm-hmm. And now also, if the fans of the different competitors of the different athletes are able to track them within forums. So Riot is supporting discussion areas for people to follow and talk about and what's going on.
That's all going on Reddit.
Hosting the community.
Yeah, Reddit is a great kind of front page of the internet where folks are chatting about all the tournaments that are going on. But when there are big plays and big moments at various tournaments, there's such a large audience that's watching it that actually bumps it onto Reddit's front page. So if there's the equivalent of a hole-in-one, which is our kind of pentakills, that will hit front page of Reddit because so many people are chattering about it.
So now, and then you're here in Germany because you just launched, because you're here to talk to DLD. Because you just actually started this year's tournament.
Right. We have a broadcast facility out in Cologne, which is kind of a great facility out there, and we've built our version of a battle arena. So just like you would go to any other sports arena, our fans are coming here. They have their thunder sticks that they're cheering and watching the game, and it's every Thursday and Friday. There's 4 games played. It's about a 5-hour broadcast there.
Well, you told me something interesting. So you said that you built something. Why did you guys build all of this stuff?
Esports hasn't really existed on this pro level before, and we wanted to treat our fans, our League of Legends players, the same as any fan would come to expect of a European Premier League match or an NFL game. And really to control that broadcast quality, we were like, well, do we hire someone from a BBC Sports or a Fox Sports to go build this out? If they have no game knowledge, it's really hard for them to do. So we've had to kind of home grow this entire new division within Riot to broadcast these games. It's reaching hundreds of thousands. It's reaching millions of people every day. We go broadcast, so we wanted to make sure it stayed authentic and genuine.
I got to add to that's really cool for us because we're so close to the metal, right? I mean, we don't have to go through a ton of different filters to get things moving and changing in that broadcast. If there's an issue or we have an idea, some really cool creative ideas, some new way to reach them, it's a phone call, and because of the way they're set up, it's basically immediate, which is really cool.
You got the bat line to me.
I know, I got the bat line. So I think the other thing that's really notable about this for us, for Coca-Cola, is again reach and the consumption pattern, right? Because there's, most video games historically have been consumption in one way, right? You play the game. That's how you consume the entertainment. But these guys have created 2 forms, right? It's consumption and it's viewership. And viewership is growing in such an amazing way. And unless you're in the game sphere, it just doesn't resonate. It's just that who's in that game sphere is, again, that target market that I know we're very interested in.
Who is watching? Who do you think is watching then? Dustin, you tell them who is.
Sure. Predominantly, right now, and there's some drift, but predominantly male, say 17 to 30 in that range as a wide demo, something like that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of spot on. It is a similar demographic to our player base,
and primarily live viewing. So it's appointment hour,
yeah.
Live viewing. If you don't watch it, you missed it.
Well, it's also available. Video on demand, which is a great feature of the internet. Obviously, it's kind of available at your fingertips, whereas if you're missing a football game, for example, it's really hard to go track down that broadcast of it. But we want to make sure that our broadcast is available to our global fan base. So it's actually casted is our version of shoutcasters who are talking through the game, but it's casted in 10 different languages. So you can view it in Portuguese or in Polish or in German or in English. And so we want to make sure that the consumption's available.
It's funny because I will add a little color to the conversation in that when I look out at the audience, people are looking at us, some of them are like, what is what? But it's like the kind of thing where, we get this a lot, I think, collectively, right? There is nothing in the world that can open your eyes to what this thing is other than going to an event. So they held their 2013 Worlds at Staples Center, sold out in
under an hour.
Under an hour. I don't know that the Rolling Stones even sold it out when they came through town the last time at full, and at full price over here. And then say 12,000 people are running around this place. I mean, it's in LA, so you've got a lot of sort of English speakers cruising around there. By the way, going to watch 2 teams 5-on-5 compete against each other for how long? And the event goes on for
4 or 5 hour broadcast.
4 or 5 hour broadcast. None of the 5 players competing speak English, and yet the crowd engagement is like nothing I've ever seen before.
And just to give you an idea, if we brought Real Madrid and Manchester United to the U.S. to play a football game, we wouldn't sell a ticket. And Staples Center was sold out in under an hour. But how did you went there with some of your bosses from Coke? What did they think when they walked in?
Everybody was stunned. You know, this gets into the misconception of gamers, I think, and some of the stuff you were talking about earlier. You know, there is a misconception of gamers. I think a lot of us that are, you know, at a certain point in our lives still think a gamer is, antisocial, you know, and has these very, I won't go into the details, but very, not a pretty picture. And that just couldn't be further from the truth. You know, today gamers are everywhere. You consume games, I'm sure, most of you, on your handheld devices. You might not even consider them games, but they are games. And, you know, everybody in between plays and consumes in different ways. So it just so happens that this particular expression of a game, you know, again, is a very important demographic.
And Dustin, one other thing on that too is like what's really interesting is these are gamers and they're not traditional sport enthusiasts. And so when they do tune in to watch these events, or when they do come, they haven't been really exposed to other sports. A lot of them are like, you know, I never really understood sports until I attended this event, because, you know, they're painting their chest, they're experiencing it just like any other sport.
That's not a lot different from a college football game.
It's not.
You see this stuff, and they're not wearing cheese on their head. Right. They're wearing other stuff.
Right.
But you're talking about the elite league. That is a very high-level player who's training and conditioning and focused on the game. But Matt, you're working on something else with them.
Yeah, we decided early on that we felt like there was this really amazing opportunity and a really great sync with one of our brands, Coke Zero, about the idea of giving amateur players a road to the pros. Because, you know, most of us, when we were young, always had aspirations of being pro at something, at some level, whether we realize that or not.
And sitting there saying, I'm better than that guy. I could have won.
So we wanted to give, we wanted to work with Riot, and we wanted to give that opportunity to the playerverse. And we wanted to be really authentic about it. We wanted to integrate properly. We want to begin to tell those stories, you know, authentically. And together, the idea is that we're going to give opportunity for amateur players to become pro, which is what the Challenger Series is all about.
So it's an organized tournament that Riot's running.
That's correct, yeah. That's
Challenger
right.
Series.
It's brand new, just kicked off, last Tuesday in Europe and Saturday in North America. Yeah. And Riot's running this league just like they run their championship series, and with the same level of production value, and they're on it just like they are on their pro series, but it's all about those top amateur players getting in a position where they can go pro. And I mean, you know.
Now, what is it?
It is a training ground for future pros, and it's kind of possibility as anything. And it's cool as a competitor to know that there is this illuminated path now that you could get to that professional level where you're making a salary and sponsors are on board, and you're becoming kind of a superstar status within the gaming community.
So you're making this up. And so the name of the winning team was
SK
Telecom.
Yeah. Yeah, so SK Telecom in Korea
sponsored the winning team, and the winning team won.
They actually own that team. So in Korea,
well, they own the team, but the prize money,
$1 million prize pool.
So they won $1 million for winning the tournament.
Lucky guys, you can make a lot of money playing video games.
Playing for SK Telecom.
Yep.
It sounds a lot like a sport.
Yeah, it is a sport. These guys are athletes.
And there was, I saw one of the videos where a guy coming to the stadium took an hour to walk in because he was inundated by fans wanting autographs.
Yeah.
The spectacular thing is that this whole thing's going on in the Staples Center, and these idols of millions are in there, and anybody walking down on the street that would likely be sitting in this room doesn't even know what that is. And you'd have to call your kid to find out.
Right.
And they might not even know.
Right.
Yeah.
So
now you're doing this, and that prize money is coming from Riot. You're obviously making a huge profit on this.
Not so much on esports. It is an investment, as I kind of mentioned, and you mentioned too. You know, esports has been around for a long time, but the infrastructure of esports hasn't really been there. So, you know, Riot's made a big investment to build that out, and there's obviously a lot of capital expenditures, whether you're talking about TV production equipment or building out a studio from scratch.
So this is really an investment for the community. This isn't a profit-driven opportunity.
This is an investment for the community, and you know, there are some avenues of monetization, whether it's ad sales throughout the stream, because we're getting kind of massive viewership.
Is anybody else doing this?
Other companies are also doing it. So Starcraft 2 has a really kind of strong esports scene as well.
That's a Blizzard game.
That's a Blizzard game. And
now that was #1.
Yeah, it used to be the biggest esport in the world, and it's been huge in Korea for the past decade. And
it's also a single-player experience. It's like you against another person, where this is much more team-driven.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a team 5-on-5 game, which is super compelling.
Right, and there are also leagues. There's Major League Gaming.
Yeah, so there are independent kind of third-party organizers that have been hosting these quarterly tournaments, and they'll do big events at convention centers or even some stadiums. I mean, our partner in Europe, ESL Electronic.
So why didn't you go with them?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I think we really wanted to get, close to the core of the experience, and all these other groups are very, very good and talented at what they do, and they're friends of mine, by the way, all of them.
That's why I'm putting you on the spot.
But I think that in order to really win the hearts and minds of the game players, sometimes you have to win the hearts and minds of the game makers, right? And so you want to stay close to the content. And especially for what we're trying to do with the way we're trying to integrate. And that's why working with the game makers is so important to us.
And these guys are doing their own league. So we've got just a little bit of time left. If there are any questions, we can open up to questions if anybody has anything. Otherwise, we can just keep talking amongst ourselves. Anyone? We've silenced you. Gino.
I see a question.
We've had a tremendous interest in this team versus team ever since ever since NetTrek, I guess. I don't know if you remember that way back.
Way back when.
Yeah, you're very old, Gino.
Yeah, thanks. But some of the things that we've been looking at, potentially, I'm just wondering if you guys think there is a viable model. There is 5-on-5, which is kind of like basketball. But this whole notion of like 100 against 100. So if you look at, and then if you look at kind of, especially in Asia where you have PC game rooms, and they're all kind of commoditized right now. But to differentiate them, to design a game for like 100 versus 100 over an evening experience. I'm just wondering if you guys have any, based upon your existing experience, especially with league play, and here you guys know how valuable F1 is and all these other franchises. Do you think there's a viable model for something like that, given your experience and given your understanding of these Asian players as well, too?
Gino
and the
runs
potential
the
market for that.
Hong Kong.
Yeah, well, I think there may be. It's not really our bread and butter. Our focus is Summoner's Rift, which is our map. It's equivalent to a baseball field or a soccer field, and so having something where you're just overcrowding the field with hundreds of players would kind of ruin the experience for it. But there are games. Battlefield has tons of players in it. World of Warcraft's obviously hundreds, thousands of players, and so right.
If you had something engineered for like 100 against 100 in like a team competition kind of thing, you think like shadow baiting in the early days without the lag and all this other stuff. The advantage of having a PC game room is you've got the LAN talking to another LAN. So
yeah, I think it's a great idea, Gino, but I think that it comes down to when you're asking Dustin, when you're asking Matt, it's when one of those is successful, great, we'd love to get on board. When you're asking Dustin, you're saying, why do we only have 5 guys on the basketball court? Wouldn't the basketball game be better if we had 100 on 100? So League of Legends is the game. They have the map, and they compete within that rule set. If somebody else wants to build that game, that could be really cool. And nobody's saying that they can't.
And they
just like FPS is a really cool sector, World of Tanks is really cool.
Like they need, and you can expand, but they need the continuity. They need the consistency of the map because the game's ever changing, which makes this game so special. So these guys mod the game all the time at a pretty fast clip. And because of that, it's ever changing. And because of that, it's impossible to master. And so you get the best players in the world trying to master this game, and then they change some of the components, and the thing plays a little bit differently. So the map is important because there's got to be something consistent.
Okay, we got time for one more. We actually don't, but we'll take one. Uri, I can't ask you because you're a gamer.
You're almost in every country except of 2. Mm-hmm. Which countries are these?
Do you want to guess? Anybody want to guess? No? Well, you're putting me on the spot. One is Cuba, and the other one is North Korea.
And League of Legends is also not available in those countries.
Okay.
Yeah.
21 seconds. Uri, what do you want to know?
Basic question for Dustin. First, League of Legends is a great game, but I'm curious about where the company's headed in the next 2 to 3 years. Does the game itself has an expiration date? If that's the case, what's next then? And PC, I mean, PC is awesome, but there's all those new platforms, you know, like the one I'm holding in my hand. Is this coming up, or?
Yeah, you know, we're
2 seconds, Dustin.
2 seconds.
2-second answer.
No big changes for the game, and it's a sport just like anything else. So baseball's been around 110 years. You know, I'm not saying League of Legends is going to be around that long, but we see the shelf life as hopefully decades.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank all of you for coming.
Thank you.